Amid escalating tensions between India and Canada, the United States has named a former raw agent in what it calls the murder for hire plot involving Khalistani terrorist Gurpatwant Pannun. In fact, the FBI released a poster of the official whom it identified as Vikash Yadav and called him wanted by the FBI. Remember, Pannun has also been declared as most wanted by India's NIA. Are the United States and Canada acting in tandem? An Indian inquiry team is in America, even as all of this is unfolding. Only a couple of days ago came the news that India had informed the United States that this man, identified as Vikash Yadav by the Americans, has been dismissed from government service and is no longer a government employee and in fact has been detained. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo Story. This is an incredible case of competing truths, contested narratives, and a diplomatic storm. Amid the escalation between India and Canada comes the announcement and the indictment from the United States of America that basically names an official, now a former official, from the CRPF on deputation to the RANW, an official who is no longer in service and has been detained, who has been charged with contracting a man called Nikhil Gupta to kill or eliminate Gurpatwant Pannun, a man designated as a terrorist by India, a man who has also been a lawyer for Hardeep Nijjar. Hardeep Nijjar's killing has led to a parallel diplomatic storm between India and Canada. But in the case of the United States of America, you actually have an Indian investigative team in the US. And as these posters are released by the FBI calling Vikash Yadav wanted, India has informed the United States of America that Vikash Yadav is no longer an employee of the government. Are the United States and Canada acting in tandem? At some point, will the Pannu case and the Nijjar case get linked? And if so, how do we understand the very different way in which the India-US friction is playing out from the India-Canada one? Let me introduce our guests on the program today. Joining me from Canada is Terry Milewski, who's of course a senior journalist and the author of a book that really takes you deep inside the Khalistan project. Welcome, Terry. Good to see you again. Also joining me is military veteran General Bhatia, who's of course been a former Director General of Military Ops. Good to see you, sir. Suhasini Haidar, one of India's finest diplomatic journalists, diplomatic editor at The Hindu, is with us. Always a pleasure to have you. And veteran diplomat Ambassador Prabhu Dayal is with us as well. Welcome to all of you. Thank you very much. Let me get first comments. Terry, actually, I'll start with you because even though the story today is India and the US, you have been long arguing that at some point these stories are going to converge. What do you make of not just what's happened, but what impact that might have on what the Canadians under Trudeau are doing and saying? Because there's a sense or a growing cynicism in India that the Americans are basically firing from the shoulder of the Trudeau government and acting in tandem.
I think what's happening is that the Indians and the Americans are working their way towards a nice little deal, whereby much of this, not all of it, but some of it is going to be swept under the rug, and that India can tell its people, the Indian government can tell Indians that we've achieved a diplomatic triumph here because there's really no prospect of having a public embarrassing trial of Mr. Yadav, and the Americans are going to let us off the hook. At least that's how they'll sell the resulting deal. The Canadians are more or less left out of this, except for the lingering problem that has always existed on the Indian side. The Indians have been very vociferous in denouncing the Canadian allegations, as you know, as absurd and preposterous and so forth, while at the same time offering no dispute at all of the American allegations, which are the same. The Americans have alleged that this former Indian government official was involved in plotting murder on Canadian soil of a Khalistani activist. And the FBI has alleged that Yadav was the principal in this plot. And India has been saying that Canada's allegations that an Indian government official was involved in a murder plot are exactly the same as the American allegations that a government official was involved in a murder plot. And all along, the Indian government has been telling, oh, no, these are completely different. The two cases are unrelated. Well, read the FBI indictment, please, in which Nikhil Gupta, who is indicted as the handler of this alleged plot, who hired the alleged hitman, he says, yeah, he tells the hitman, we're out to kill Gurpatwant Pannun, as you rightly reported. And there is also another target in Canada, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. In other words, the same allegations have been made by the US and Canada, and India, as far as I can tell, is still offering no dispute in the American case, different geopolitical relationship, right? I think
but that could be reversed, because the Indians might argue, have offered no hard evidence, whereas the Americans have.
Indeed, but does that evidence not work somehow in the Canadian matter? I mean, it's not as though it doesn't apply. You have the suspect on tape saying that Nijjar is also a target of this same plot, and Nijjar ends up dead. What is that, a coincidence? I mean, it seems to me quite clear that the Americans and the Canadians are on the same trail, looking perhaps from different angles, making the same allegation, and that India's protestations that these are completely different cases simply will not wash. It's simply nonsensical. If you read the indictment, you see it's the same plot. Anyway,
Okay. We
don't know enough about the deal, but that's the broad outline.
I don't know. Ambassador Dayal might be better able to comment on whether he thinks that this is moving towards a deal. Ambassador Dayal, because at the moment, what ordinary Indians who are not diplomats, who are not deeply into this issue, are seeing is the FBI release a poster where one of India's own agents, let's remember that as far as we know, we only got to know 2 days ago that this man called Vikash Yadav has been terminated and has been detained. But if we can bring up that FBI poster, please, and actually juxtapose it with the NIA's own poster, which shows Gurpatwant Pannun as one of our most wanted. When you look at that poster, you know, what I see as an Indian is there was somebody in government service. Either we're saying he went rogue, or we think he did something wrong, which is why we've detained him and dismissed him. I don't think we see a deal. I think we see either an acknowledgement that Vikash Yadav was up to no good, or that he's gone rogue, or both. What do you see? Do you see that the Indians and Americans have cooperated enough to reach some sort of arrangement, as Terry hints?
Well, you know, the Americans have themselves said that they have received full cooperation from India. And unlike what my friend from Canada says, there are sharp differences between what happened in our relations with Canada and what happened with the United States. The United States shared evidence with us, and there were teams which were exchanged, visits were exchanged, and therefore it was possible to examine what these allegations were because they were substantiated with some evidence. On the other hand, the Canadian Prime Minister kept saying that he had given India proof after he had made those allegations. He repeated his statements on a number of occasions. In fact, other senior personages from the Canadian side also did so, that they had given evidence, they had given proof. Now, a couple of days ago, while deposing before that inquiry commission, federal inquiry, the Canadian Prime Minister says that what he had shared with India were intelligence inputs and had not given concrete proof. Now, intelligence inputs do not constitute proof. They are hearsay. They are what agencies have learned, and this information is shared. So, what has gone on with the United States is completely different as compared to what has happened in the case of Canada. Besides, I think Mr. Justin Trudeau comes out as a liar because he has repeatedly said to us that he has given us proofs and this is what he has said to the world. But when he was testifying before the inquiry commission, he couldn't tell a lie there because if his lie had been found out, the consequences for him would have been disastrous.
So
So he
you
was
don't see
honest
the
there.
dots. You
He
don't see the
said,
dots. You don't see the dots converging. You don't see these two cases converging at some point.
well, Khalistani separatist activities in many Western countries have been on the rise, and that is where the dots converge. The Khalistanis have targeted Indian diplomatic missions and consulates in Australia, in Canada, and the United States. So there is a sense of convergence, and the fact of the matter is, all these countries take the plea that they respect freedom of speech, that in their countries freedom of speech is cannot be challenged, and they have to allow it. But these are people who are targeting the Indian nation, calling for the murder of Indian diplomats. How can it be construed as freedom of speech? This is an outright misuse of freedom of speech. Unfortunately, all these countries don't seem to get the message, and I think it is essential for the Indian government to convey to all these countries that holding separatist Khalistan elements and allowing them to damage the relations with India will be very, very harmful for them too. India will have to build a constructive and sustained engagement with the Sikh diaspora, and at the same time, it will have to take action vis-a-vis
Okay.
these extremists through the government's concern, and these governments have to become more receptive to our concerns.
Okay, but let's also remember that just before the Prime Minister was in the United States of America, the White House invited known Khalistani separatists. I find the Americans seem to speak in forked tongues on this issue. Let's play out the last on record response of the White House. This after it became known that the ex-RAW official charged with being involved in this plot had indeed been dismissed from service. Take a look.
They did inform us that the individual who was named in the Justice Department indictment is no longer an employee of the Indian government.
Are you satisfied with the cooperation with the Indian government?
We are satisfied with the cooperation. It continues to be an ongoing process. We continue to work with them on that, but we do appreciate the cooperation, and we appreciate them updating us on their investigation as we update them on ours.
And do you see further meetings with them?
I don't have anything to announce.
Okay, so, Hasnani, if I can bring you here, you have been actually flagging, in a way, the different approaches, and Terry talks about that, how does India have one approach to Canada, another to the United States? Pannun was the lawyer for Nijjar. The indictment links both cases. The Indians are taking the indictment seriously. The Indian investigation team is at this moment in the United States of America. But you heard Ambassador Dayal, you can't compare the two. How do you respond?
Well, I think we are making a difference between the manner in which the two governments have approached us. I think at some point that is going to go away. Mr. Trudeau may not last next year's election. We've already heard from Pierre Poilievre to say that if the RCMP takes these allegations this seriously, they are serious. So I don't think that getting into the form of how we have been approached with evidence and allegations is going to really matter, because in a little while there'll be another government in the US as well. What happens if that government becomes more aggressive than the present one? I mean, I'm just making the point that I don't think we need to get into what Mr. Trudeau says, because it's clear that a lot of his sentiments are fairly half-formed, without meaning to be very rude, because he says one thing and then we don't quite understand what these phrases mean. It's almost as if there's a preponderance of doubt in things that he's himself saying. I think he was misquoted on what he said in that commission, because I think what he was saying was that There was primary evidence that we took, or primary intelligence that we took to the Indian side and said, it is for you to investigate. And the Indian side said they wouldn't cooperate, which has been read to mean that the Canadians didn't have any evidence to begin with. I have no doubt in what you're saying, that the US and Canada are actually, in step with each other. The fact is that even today, we don't have an answer to a basic fact, which is that when the Canadians raised their allegations to begin with, which we know was in July, a month after, that's when the Canadian NSA spoke to our NSA. If we know that the Canadians raised that in their parliament, they raised it when Prime Minister Trudeau came to India before that. Essentially, why did the US not spare our blushes? Why did the US not tell us at that point that in November they were going to unseal an indictment that more or less corroborates everything that that the Canadians were alleging, i.e., that there seems to be some kind of a plot? It's a question of who believes what is enough evidence to establish wrongdoing. I mean, so far the US has also said we have transcripts, we have photographs, we have videos. Now they've put out this photograph of Vikash Yadav. This has not happened before this. What I'm saying is that I don't think the US is out of the loop as far as the Canadian case is concerned. It is quite likely, given the dates and the timeline that we have seen, that it is the US that provided that information to Canada, given what we know is in the transcript. What is in the transcript is that this man, Vikash Yadav, spoke to Nikhil Gupta, and essentially Nikhil Gupta spoke to a DA informant who also hired a hitman who was an undercover FBI operative. So the moment you've got an undercover FBI operative in the plot, you know that the US is already in a kind of game of entrapment. The idea that somehow there's this deal happening between India and the US and we only have to worry about Canada, I think this is perhaps hyped optimism on the Indian part. So the first thing I would like to say is really that this is not going away. 1 year later, we're still hearing the bits and pieces of this case that keep coming out. And please look at the fact that not only are there bits and pieces that are coming out in evidence and unsealed indictments, but look at the way they have leaked to various international agencies and international newspapers. The leak about Mr. Yadav's name came out in May in an American newspaper. That means that American officials are essentially leaking stories, putting out stories about what is to follow. If the RCMP today is talking about Lawrence Bishnoi and is talking, it has already appeared in other papers. Now we have some papers saying that the Indian Home Minister has been named as well. I don't know what to believe in terms of this shadow war that's being played out. I think there is a psychological pressure war being played as well. But I think from the Indian point of view, we have to take this much more seriously and stop behaving as if what Mr. Trudeau says can be laughed out of the park. Therefore, all these allegations are unsubstantiated and unserious. The allegations are serious. There are indictments that go with them. I think there's a difference also between the Canadian legal system and the American legal system, in which case, in the American system, the indictment actually comes out for us to read. In the Canadian system, you're not allowed to do that until you go to trial. And Terry can correct me if I'm wrong on that. The last thing I have to say is that this is also about Indian credibility. We are not going to just be able to say we don't do this if, on the one hand, our politicians are saying, yes, we do go and ghar mein ghus ke maro when it comes to Pakistan. You can't say, yes, I do it when it comes to Pakistan. No, the Canadians are talking rubbish. Yes, with the US, I'm willing to set up a high-level panel and send that panel to the US, led by the Deputy NSA of India. With the Qataris, we're willing to cut a deal when they make those allegations against us. In the UAE case that has gone to the UK, we have a different kind of approach. So my point is that we need to now sit up and take this seriously. And I know, Barkha, you've been doing these shows for a year now. The fact is that it is not possible any longer for us to just continuously say there's no truth to any of the allegations, because it is about Indian credibility. And sometimes it's not enough to just say it stands for itself.
I agree with you very much on the fact that with respect to Ambassador Dayal, I feel very cynical about responses from the United States of America, much more so than Canada, because I think Trudeau is a bit of a caricature. It's the Americans who seem to be playing a kind of deep game here that is tougher to read. But General Bhatia, I take Suhasini's point that, this is about credibility. You've got to either own it or deny it and wish it away. But I think for a lot of Indians, it's also about staggering Western hypocrisy. On the one hand, people like Gurpatwant Singh Pannun are being protected in the name of free speech. On the other hand, I am old enough to remember an American journalist who was actually imprisoned because she did a story that revealed the name of a US agent, right? It was the Scooter Libby case. So the point that I'm trying to make is that for a lot of people, this is Western hypocrisy. When the Americans take out somebody in another country, it's to be lauded. When the Israelis do it, it's brilliant Netanyahu statecraft. When the Indians may or may not have done it, I have no idea. It is cast in a morality play. This, I don't know. I'm confused here about why we should accept this casting of this as a moral question. I don't think this is a moral question. Countries around the world have done this. I think this is a question of how these relationships are managed, how things are managed behind in the back channel. And I think what Terry is saying is that the Americans and Indians are managing something in the back channel that the Indians and Canadians are not being able to. What do you think?
Thank you, Barkha. I think let me first start by saying that India today is a risen, responsible power. It is a resurgent power, resurgent nation. And we are a global leader in regional power. We do not endorse, we don't have a policy of eliminating people in other countries. Okay. Having said that, now let's get into the facts, what you talked about. As a matter of principle, anything that threatens our national interests, we have a right to protect and project our national interests. And sovereignty and territorial integrity is our core national interest. When the US does that, and you just flash the photograph of General Soleimani, of the Iranians, who was taken out by the Americans, or the Americans the US went into Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, world over, Israel is doing it. That's okay. That's fine. That's hypocrisy, right? They are entitled to do that. It's their right to protect the national interest. But when India does that, it is incorrect. It is wrong. It's principally incorrect. I think, let me shoot straight as a soldier. There is hypocrisy and total hypocrisy in this. And Canada, what's doing? They're not Khalistani terrorists. What is Khalistan? There's nothing about Khalistan. The people of Punjab are the most patriotic people. They're a very proud people. He's a Canadian terrorist who's talking about it. He's in Canada. He's a Canadian citizen. Where does Khalistan come into being? I really don't understand this. Right? And if they're talking of, there are different relations between India, US, India, Canada. What is Canada trying to tell us? What is it trying to teach us? It is fermenting trouble for India, and we know it. We all know it. We have to understand that. And it's not, we should not accept it. We have to tell the Canadians that this you can't cross our red lines. We are no longer the nation which the West thinks that we are. Today, we are a global leader. We are a power in ourselves, and we have the right to protect and project our national interests. Okay. So to that, I have no doubts about it. And the US, they can continue to do what they are doing. The Israelis continue to do what they are doing. I've been saying for long years that people like Hafiz Sayyid, Masood Azhar, Sayyid Salahuddin are fair targets. What is wrong with it? They're fair targets, and we should not preach.
But then maybe we should own that. Yes. Maybe the point is, maybe the point Suhasini is making is that you either own it or you take cover behind plausible deniability. That's how these operations have been over the years. And you're right to say the West has led most of them. Israel is leading multiple numbers of them at this point. Are we kind of caught between two stools here? Is that the awkwardness? Now, I normally do not platform Gurpatwant Singh, but I feel compelled to do so in this program because the US indictment describes him, and this is the part I found the most galling, as a vocal critic of the government. This man is not some activist. He's not a Sikh leader. He's not a critic of the government. He's out and out a terrorist. And if you have any doubt, we have a speech on record that should set anybody's doubts to rest. Let's listen in and I'll come right back to you, Terry. Take a look.
We are asking the Sikh Panth to not fly Air India. 19 ਨਵੰਬਰ ਤੋਂ global blockade ਤੇ Air India ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਚੱਲਣ ਨਹੀਂ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਏਗੀ। ਸਿੱਖ ਪੰਥ ਵਾਲਿਓ 19 ਨਵੰਬਰ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ 에ਅਰ ਇੰਡੀਆ 'ਚ ਸਫ਼ਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਨਾ, ਜਾਨ ਨੂੰ ਖਤਰਾ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ। ਔਰ ਸਾਡਾ ਇਹ ਸੁਨੇਹਾ ਹੈ ਭਾਰਤ ਨੂੰ, ਇੰਦਰਾ ਗਾਂਧੀ ਇੰਟਰਨੈਸ਼ਨਲ 에ਅਰਪੋਰਟ 19 ਨਵੰਬਰ ਨੂੰ ਬੰਦ ਰਹੇਗਾ। ਇਹ 19 ਨਵੰਬਰ ਉਹੀ ਹੈ ਜਿੱਦਣ ਵਰਲਡ ਟੈਰਰ ਕੱਪ ਦਾ ਫਾਈਨਲ ਵੀ ਹੈ। ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੱਸ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਜਾਏਗਾ ਕਿ ਭਾਰਤ ਨੇ, ਹਿੰਦੁਸਤਾਨ ਨੇ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਦੀ ਨਸਲਕੁਸ਼ੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ, ਤੇ ਇਹ 에ਅਰਪੋਰਟ ਦਾ ਨਾਂ ਸ਼ਹੀਦ ਬੇਅੰਤ ਸਿੰਘ, ਸ਼ਹੀਦ ਸਤਵੰਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਖਾਲਿਸਤਾਨ 에ਅਰਪੋਰਟ ਹੋਏਗਾ ਜਦੋਂ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਆਜ਼ਾਦ ਕਰਵਾਇਆ ਜਾਏਗਾ। ਆਜ਼ਾਦੀ ਦੀਆਂ ਜੰਗਾਂ ਜਨੂਨ ਨਾਲ ਜਿੱਤੀਆਂ ਜਾਂਦੀਆਂ, ਤੇ ਆਜ਼ਾਦੀ ਦੀ ਜੰਗ, ਪੰਜਾਬ ਨੂੰ ਆਜ਼ਾਦ ਕਰਾਉਣ ਦੀ ਜੰਗ ਖਾਲਿਸਤਾਨ ਰੈਫਰੈਂਡਮ ਦੇ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਚੱਲ ਚੁੱਕੀ ਹੈ। ਭਾਰਤੀ ਹੁਕੂਮਤ ਦੇ ਟੈਂਕ ਤੇ ਤੋਪ ਇਸ ਆਜ਼ਾਦੀ ਦੀ ਜੰਗ ਨੂੰ ਰੋਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਕਦੇ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਸਿੱਖ 1.25 ਲੱਖ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਲੜਨ ਨੂੰ ਬਣਾਇਆ ਹੈ। ਜਨੂਨ ਹੈ ਆਜ਼ਾਦੀ ਦਾ ਤੇ ਹਥਿਆਰ ਹੈ ਕਲਮ ਦਾ। We are going to break the backbone of Indian economic system and we are going to balkanize India. 19 ਨਵੰਬਰ ਤੋਂ ਸਿੱਖ ਪੰਥ ਵਾਲਿਓ 에ਅਰ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਫ਼ਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਨਾ, ਜਾਨ ਨੂੰ ਖਤਰਾ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ।
I played that to make the point, Terry. This man has been on public broadcasting platforms in Canada. Trudeau has defended him in the name of free speech. The US indictment documents describe him to be a vocal critic of the government. It was just necessary to play that to highlight what we're actually talking about here. He's also shared the stage with Nijjar multiple times in Canada. He was Nijjar's lawyer. To that extent, the two cases are, of course, connected. But these men are terrorists. They're openly talking about balkanizing India. Why would they not be considered fair targets by India? Terry.
I think you're quite right to select that clip, although there are many others, by the way. I followed Pannun's career for the last several years, and this is typical of him. He is basically, he went beyond what he just said. He went beyond that. So we're going to break the backbone of the Indian economic system. By the way, this is also a man who had the indecency to show up at the Air India Memorial in Toronto with the names of the dead written on the wall behind him, posing as one of the mourners, so sympathetic to the victims, while simultaneously selecting the mastermind of the Air India bombing, Talvinder Singh Parmar, as the poster boy for his referendum campaign, as a martyred hero, not what he really was, namely Canada's worst ever mass murderer. So Pannun, I mean, as bad as you make it sound, Barkha, it's probably worse if you really look at what he's been saying. And there's no, I think it may be an exaggeration to say that Trudeau is defending him. Trudeau says, I hold no brief for him. I think he's toast anyway politically within Canada. Trudeau says that what he's doing is defending a principle, not a person. That he is defending the principle of Canadian sovereignty, and that he doesn't want to be the kind of prime minister that, when told by his intelligence services that foreign agents are plotting murder of Canadian citizens on Canadian soil, says, I don't care, kill a few terrorists, I don't know, let them, I'm not going to say anything. He doesn't want to be that kind of prime minister. That's his case. But where we stand now is that India has got him boxed in to saying that to looking like he's on the side of the terrorists, which through indifference for 40 years, a whole series of Canadian governments have been guilty of. Canada has got an absolutely shameful record, again, worse than you say, of indulging and tolerating and putting up with this sort of nonsense, including threats of violence against and death threats against Indian diplomats, for example. So Canada's been lazy and complacent about all of that and needs to crack down as part of whatever deal emerges, if one does, in this affair. Meanwhile, I think, as I said earlier, there are vulnerabilities on all sides. I mean, I think that India has got to concede that it can't just take unto itself the right to go into another country and kill people. Yes, it's perfectly legitimate to say, oh, by the way, here is Justin Trudeau's tweet applauding the American assassination of Osama bin Laden's number 2, Ayman al-Zawahiri. A Hellfire missile came through his door. So, and Trudeau tweeted, "Oh, well, this brings world peace closer. This is a great day. Hooray! Let's kill them." So I mean, there's hypocrisy.
But a lot of
still
Indians
around,
will
right?
see that, right? Terry, a lot of Indians will see this as staggering hypocrisy. But I do also take Suhasini's point that we're in this situation, Ambassador Dayal, where we are neither as a state owning it nor denying it. We're partially conceding the point when it comes to the Americans and completely denying it when it comes to the Canadians, which is all very confusing because these cases overlap at some point. Ambassador Dayal.
Firstly, let me address this issue of the Americans and the Canadians and whether we are treating the matters differently. We have been on record as saying that the Canadians have not given us any evidence. The Americans have come forward and had discussions with us and furnished some proof. And in fact, they have filed a case. So the two cases become absolutely different. The examples are different. Secondly, as regards these Five Eyes, the Five Eye countries, they have all become hotbeds for anti-India extremists. And these extremists are calling for the separation of Punjab from India. They're calling for the Balkanization of India. And they are also asking for violent acts to be carried out both within India and against Indian diplomats. Thirdly, and this is the most important point that I have, I think it is essential for our government to convey to all these countries who host separatist Khalistan elements that they cannot have good relations with us while allowing such separatist movements on their soil. I think it is time for us to be firm and convey this message.
I think that's the point, Suhasini, because when you say this issue won't go away, there are also instances in recent memory that will speak to what everybody seems to agree is an instance or is emblematic of Western hypocrisy. David Headley, the mastermind of Mumbai's terror attacks, the 26/11 terror attacks, in a US prison, suspected to be a triple agent, certainly a former DEA informant. India did ask for his extradition. That request is just pending. He's just put away for 35 years so that nobody can actually reach him, talk to him, investigate him directly. When I say nobody, I mean nobody in India. My point being that people look at all of this and they say, on the one hand, you have the Israelis tom-tomming the number of assassinations they can commit now using pagers. The Americans are celebrated. Trudeau celebrates the taking out of bin Laden in Ahmedabad. And as General Bhatia says, some of these characters are fair targets. And should India be forcefully coming out and saying that? What do you say to that?
Well, to begin with, on the question of David Headley, the US didn't just refuse to extradite him. The US has entered a plea bargain with David Headley that they would not extradite him in return for him giving all this evidence. And let's remember, they didn't arrest David Headley because of the Mumbai attacks. They knew that David Headley was involved in the Mumbai attacks planning. He had made trips to India, but they arrested him for the Danish plot on a newspaper. And then subsequently, there is his, testimony on the Mumbai attack as well. So when it comes to questions about how the US has treated India on these issues of terror investigations, there are many questions out there. But I think the larger question has to be very simple. Are we saying that we do this? No. India has said again and again, the Ministry of External Affairs has said that these transnational plots are not Indian policy, right? If we are doing this, then we can use the argument of the double standard and say others do it too and we don't really care. And then you have to stand up for that. The fact is that there is a difference between admitting to carrying out these attacks in Pakistan, for example, which is not a friendly state, and carrying them out in the United States and Canada, which until this happened, with Canada there was some tensions, but with the US we had fairly good relations. If you were to invert the questions that are coming out of the United States right now, and that's why I keep trying to make the point that we tend to think that we can just laugh off some of these accusations, but they're coming from a place, right? If it is in fact true that there is an Indian RNAW official who was talking to somebody about carrying out hits in the US and in Canada. According to the second indictment, it says he was going to give him 2 to 3 hits a month to carry out in the US and in Canada. He talks about the fact that the hit on Nijjar was part of their planning. He talks about the fact that we get all our hits kind of thing. These are all coming out in this indictment. If it is all true, if it is true that India is planning to assassinate various activists, whatever they are, and that Pannun video really speaks for itself. It's horrific for Indians to listen to. It's horrific for Indians to see those tableaus of our prime ministers being killed, going out there publicly in Canada. But if it is true that the Indian government was involved in planning these attacks of 2 to 3 a month, according to the US indictment, I don't think that then we can expect that we will not face pushback over it. We can try and say, yeah, other people do it, but we're not even saying that right now. The second part is really about
but there have been, just for argument's sake, there have been covert operations that have been admitted to much later in time, right? People don't always admit to an operation in real time.
I think the first rule of these operations tend to be don't get caught. I think a second rule now should be, at the risk of being facetious, don't hire an FBI undercover agent and expect that then you can just bluster it out, if that is in fact what happened. I'm saying these are US allegations. I'm not saying that they actually happened. The larger point I'm actually trying to make over here is that we tend to think that each time that a little more is given. After all, a year ago, there was no question that India was involved and that we were willing to cooperate with the US because they were being forthcoming with some evidence. A year later, we have a team going there. We have India saying to the US that this person no longer works for us. I'm not sure what that means. Is that a way of distancing themselves? Or is it a way of ensuring that, in fact, in case the US asks for their extradition, which is something we should consider, what is India going to do then? That if in case the US asks for extradition, we can actually safely say we don't know where he is. Because I'd seen those speculative reports that India was going to announce that they had arrested Mr. Yadav. And then it would be very difficult if there was an extradition request. I'm just making the point that this is essentially about our credibility, Barkha, and we need to figure out what is our policy on this issue. We have not really heard much more than denial of the Canadian allegations and a kind of quiet acceptance of the American ones. We're not actually seeing what is the Indian policy, what did we do over here, and how far is this, how much more is going to come out?
Okay, I think those are all good questions. General Bhatia, there's also one more question that none of us have addressed. What does the country owe Mr. Yadav? It is quite unprecedented for an RAW official to be identified by name, right? And now it's happened, and it's on a published poster, a wanted poster of the FBI. We don't know much about him. Obviously, the suggestion is and will be that he went rogue or that he acted independently. Otherwise, why would the government dismiss him from service? I want your take on this. I mean, what is he owed, if anything?
Yeah, I'm not endorsing what he's allegedly done because that's not the policy of the government of India. But all the same, we heard the video of Pannun. Now, what he said, if your blood doesn't boil as an Indian, there's something wrong with the blood, isn't it? It is jarring, actually. And he says it in the comfort of Canada. We have to raise the cost and consequences of the countries who actually, encourage such things on their soil and wage a war. It's waging a war against India. And if he's done that in an individual capacity, I, as an individual, not as the government of India, I'm nowhere in the government of India, as an individual, I would support him because your blood does boil, isn't it? So it's a question of, a man who is patriotic, but he's gone rogue. He's obviously not done it with the permission of the government of India because the government of India policy is very categorical and clear. We do not endorse and we do not practice such killings. So that's the bottom line. Now, the question comes whether we should support him or not, right? I think individually I would support him, but as a government cannot support him because he's gone against the policy of the government. He's an employee of the government. He was an employee of the government, right? So there are questions of principles, there's a question of patriotism, and there's a question of a job to be done. So there are contradictions, there'll be contradictions. Life is not easy. There'll be contradictions.
No, absolutely. And I think, as Suhasini reminds us, the Americans cut a deal with Headley and locked him away for 35 years so that he could not be brought to India and brought to justice in India. And perhaps in the arrest of Mr. Yadav, what seems like throwing him under the bus is actually giving him some sort of cover from the Americans. We don't know. There are wheels within wheels here, and these things happen. But I think the point is, how does this all end? How does this all play out? I want to just briefly play out what the Foreign Ministry has said today, and then come to all of you for last comments. Take a look.
I just confirmed that, yes, this particular gentleman, he is not part of the Government of India setup. He's not an employee. Beyond that, I don't have anything to share with you. Regarding people who've gone to the United States, I would say that these are members of the high-level inquiry committee that had been set up in November of 2023 to look into the inputs that were shared with us by the US, and we have been telling you that we have taken these inputs very seriously, and we remained engaged with the US side on this particular matter. Two members of the high-level committee, they've traveled there and they've held meetings with the US side. So that is what I have to share with you.
Okay. Last comments. I'll start with you, General Bhatia. Where do you see this going? The point I think is being made is, can you take one approach with the US, one approach with Canada in cases that will somewhere converge? Ambassador Dayal says you can, Terry says you can't, Suhasini says you can't. What do you say?
2 points. In the real world, you'll have to deal with each country at its own. You can't have dealing with every country the same way. It doesn't happen that way. And no one does that. The US is dealing with India differently. Canada is dealing with India differently, and so do other countries. And anyway, if you ask me individually, I think we should have got Vikash Yadav back to India and dealt with him as per the Indian law, as per the CCS rules. He's a government employee.
No, Vikash Yadav is in India, sir. Vikash Yadav is in India. Nikhil Gupta is not.
No, Vikash Yadav is in India.
There is one Indian in American custody and another here. We have arrested him here.
You're right.
Yeah.
But we should deal with him as per Indian law. Okay. Well, he has been. He is not a Government of India employee anymore. He should be Government of India employee if he was a couple of days ago, a few days ago, and we should deal with such. Let's face facts. Let's be a strong nation. Let's display our strength absolutely. Why we shying from displaying our strength? I don't understand that.
Okay. What would be at this point, Suhasini, a display of strength?
I think the fact is that this is a case everybody is watching, right? It is not something that we are going to be able to brush under the carpet. I think we've all discussed this. So if it is something where we want to show strength, we are going to need to come out much more clearly and firstly state if this is our policy. I mean, a lot of countries do it. The Israelis are openly admitting that they are carrying out these hits. The US does it and almost expects a round of applause every time. They've even killed their own citizen on other territory, and that was Anwar al-Awlaki, whom they droned. The fact is that if this is Indian policy and the government wishes to now admit to it, then they should do it. If it isn't Indian policy and it has happened, then maybe it is time to at least indicate that there is some truth to the allegations. I genuinely feel that it's not as if, I mean, I heard, I think it was General Bhatia, or it was maybe Ambassador Dayal saying that these Five Eye countries are where, have become sort of swamps of anti-Indian sentiment. I don't really think so. I don't think countries are out to get us in that sense. But yes, it is true that India's particular policy towards different diaspora over the last few years has caused concerns. If there is a transnational repression act in the United States, it's because some parts of the Indian diaspora feel targeted by the government. Whether that is about violence or not, it is certainly about the fact that they feel that the government is watching them, that they are being. And this is not just the US and in Canada, even a country like Australia, remember, has sent home Indian officials because they felt that they were targeting the Indian diaspora, parts of the Indian diaspora there. I'm not sure that we can at the same time say we have great relations with all these countries, that India is growing to be a world power, and at the same time say they are all against us and they're all harboring anti-Indian elements in them. I think there has to be some rationalism to this. We've gotten to a point where we've just decided that no matter what is leveled in terms of an argument, we are just going to reject it. And then 1 year later, we suddenly find that our government is cooperating in the case and actually accepting a lot of the things that the US is saying. So I think as analysts, we need to judge very clearly what do we have in paper. We have the US indictment. We don't yet have a Canadian indictment. We have certainly what the MEA has said. We have certainly what the State Department has said. I think if you just read some of the documents that are there available in the public sphere, you'll get your own sense of just where this case is going.
Terry, where is it headed vis-a-vis Canada in particular?
Alternative, but to have what I call a grubby little deal. Geostrategic relationships between the United States and India are simply far too important for them to be hung up on the fate of an irritant like Gurpatwant Singh Pannun. It matters too much. It matters too much to the United States, and that is why I say I do not expect, despite this wanted poster, that's nice. It holds India's feet to the fire, if you like, but I do not expect to see a trial in the United States anytime soon. I think that it'll all be there'll be a plea bargain. He will be quietly rapped on the knuckles, and then 2 years later he'll be quietly let to go free and given a gold watch for his retirement. I don't think that we're going to see any sort of Donnybrook, if a huge event where there's a confrontation. I think that a nice, quiet deal is more likely, and I think as part of that deal, I would like to see, and I would expect to see, Canada accept that it too has questions to answer about its indulgence of Khalistani terrorists and separatists over the years and right up to the present. The tilt towards the Khalistanis, the presence of Khalistanis in the cabinet, the indulgence by all parties in Canada, by the way, not just the Liberals, of the martyr posters of the Air India bomber, for example, the parades with the diorama of the assassination of Indira Gandhi. This infuriates Indians for good reason. And the Canadian politicians are present at these events, smiling or waving and hustling for votes is a disgrace. So Canada needs to learn that lesson, and soon. India needs, in my view, to learn that you can't just gaslight everybody and say that the same charges are lies over here, but they're true over there. This is nonsense. I think we all agree on that. And one final point I'll make, I think we're finally going to have to drop the petty disputes over is it intelligence or is it India? This is a semantic dispute that has nothing to contribute here. If intelligence is accurate and it reports a fact, facts are facts and facts are evidence. Whether they come from intelligence or whether you call it evidence makes no difference. I don't think that, I think India is making a mistake to make a big deal out of that. Aha, you see, Trudeau admits he has no proof. Well, you know, just because he called, by the way, he was talking then about what he had
in the past.
Yeah. Talking about the present tense. He's talking about when he first approached Modi at the G20. So, in conclusion, I expect, I could be proved wrong, it wouldn't be the first time, but I expect that there will be a deal where much of this will be swept under the rug in the cause of a geostrategic imperative. The United States and Canada belong in the same camp as India. We have a challenge from China. These things are much more important, and I think all three governments will, in the end, recognize that. We need to settle this and not have a squabble amongst ourselves. We got bigger fish to fry.
Okay, Ambassador Dayal, last word. Give me a second. Can we unmute Ambassador Dayal? Yeah, go ahead, sir. Yeah.
Suhasini was absolutely correct when she said that we are analysts and we must be able to put things in the correct perspective. So we have also to look at the fine print. It is true that allegations were made both by the United States and Canada. We asked both for proof. The United States came out with specifics, and that facilitated the intergovernmental contact. As you mentioned, an Indian team is currently in Washington, and we have been discussing with them the details and carrying out investigations at our end. On the Canadian front, we have heard allegations. We have asked them to substantiate these with proof so that we can carry out the investigations at our end. Unfortunately, as our government has repeatedly pointed out, no details and no specifics have been given. Only allegations have been hurled at us. So, for this reason, the matter has not proceeded further from our end. Now, as regards the strategic issues, we want good relations with Canada. We want good relations with the United States. We are not leveling these allegations, but I think it is time for us to talk more bluntly about the fact that we are extremely distressed by the presence of Sikh extremists, the Khalistan supporters, on the territories of the United States, Canada, and the other I-5 countries. And we feel that they are damaging the relationship, and it is time that these countries took action to put an end to these separatist activities from their soil.
But I think that's something we can certainly all agree on. Just to hear Pannu described as a Sikh leader is such a sacrilegious way to actually describe him. And I think the Sikh community in India would fully agree. We leave it there. This is probably going to get a lot worse before it gets any better. That's for sure. General Bhatia, Suhasini Haider, Ambassador Dayal, Terry Minuski, thank you for your time. And to our audience, thank you and see you tomorrow.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.